Hello, it's the 29th of August and we are live again on 31 days of live streaming in August. As I say, it's the 29th of August and today, believe it or not, I've got the missus on.
I want to be there and baby dance the night away. I let my head down if I want. Don't you just get tired chasing fame and being pretty all the time? Doesn't sound like fun. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. You can do better. Let me show you what a good time looks like. You can do better. I dare you to be wilder. Shoes off if I want. Let yourself be free and maybe you will find that there is more to life than being pretty. Honey, let's just face it. Baby, let your head down, be a little wilder. Baby, kick your shoes off, you don't have to hide it. Baby, let your head down, be a little wilder. Baby, kick your shoes off, don't hide it. I don't fit into your box, beauty queens without no flaws. You can do better, I dare you to be wilder. I don't fit into you.
Okay, very warm welcome to this show. It's now Saturday evening, 29th of August, and I'm delighted today to be joined by somebody that I know reasonably well, and that's Janine Crowshaw, who's my wife. Now, Janine has been begging me to be on this show. She's been begging me. During the planning exercise, she kept saying, when can I be on? When can I be on? When can I be on? And I said, all right, Janine, look, we're coming to the end now. So I'll tell you what, I'll let you have a go. Okay. Actually, of course, that's not true. But it did dawn on me, actually, this is absolutely true. It did dawn on me that I've been covering an awful lot of the business and commercial side of what's been happening in the last 6 months, particularly with businesses. And a number of you obviously have watched this show. I'm pleased to say, I think 32, 33 views is the maximum, which is not bad at all from a standing start. I'm very pleased with that. But we've not covered the public sector side of things, and particularly with the healthcare situation or the healthcare perspective. So I thought nobody better to talk to me about some of the challenges that they've had in the healthcare sector than Mrs. Crowshaw. So Janine Crowshaw, very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And I think I just have to redress the balance and say that it's you that's been begging me to be on the show, not the other way around. But some would say you're saving the best till the end. So I'll take that one. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Jan Crowshaw, the other half or better half of the Crowshaw Pair. I work in general practice manager, have done now for a number of years. I've been with the NHS in total for nigh on 25 years. So quite a lot of lengthy time.
Yeah, and throughout that time, obviously, I've been by your side, as it were, listening to some of the challenges that you've had, and you've obviously been at my side listening to some of the challenges I've had and listening to some of the stories that I've developed or I've managed to get hold of on the live streams and obviously with clients and such like. So obviously, first of all, you like the rest of us suddenly came across this kind of concept called lockdown back in probably what was, I think, March now. What was your initial thought when you knew about or started to see how the pandemic was developing? Was it a case of, oh my God, this could be horrendous? And I'm thinking also back, if you remember, that the talk at the time, and sometimes people have short memories, but I remember very, very clearly the talk at the time was about overwhelm in hospitals, overwhelm in surgeries, people on stretchers outside, possibly even, passing away on stretchers outside the hospitals. Italy was all over the news, and some horrendous pictures coming through from Italy. So can you remember what your initial thought or reaction was when it all started to kick off back in March?
I certainly can. It feels like it was yesterday in many ways. And I think, like the rest of the world, really, we didn't see it coming. We slowly watched it envelop and spread into this country, having watched what happened in Italy and other countries. And we literally didn't know what to anticipate. We sort of thought there was going to be a tsunami. And certainly, I think initially that the hospitals were definitely impacted by that. In general practice, it was quite different. Because the world seemed to suddenly stand still, and it happened very, very quickly once we hit lockdown. And for us, those first 2 or 3 days were extremely quiet as we had to digest the information that was coming into us. And I think one of the things that I found frustrating throughout lockdown is the way sometimes general practice has been portrayed in some of the media, as in the world thinks that we've been shut and we've been there chilling, putting our feet up. And certainly in my practice, and I know all my neighbouring practices, that is as far from reality as you can ever expect to be. We've been busier than ever. We're certainly not closed. We're open. We're just working differently. And like the rest of the world, we've had to adapt very quickly in the way we do things.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally get, excuse me, I totally get that. If you'd like to ask any questions of Janine or myself tonight, then just pop the comments or the questions in the comments below. And we can ask Janine, or I'll obviously answer them if they're perhaps more business orientated. Okay, so I've been talking a lot on these shows about having to adapt. And I don't think it's any different in public sectors. So how have you had to adapt in terms of the way you work, in terms of dealing with some of the challenges you've had to deal with? How's the surgery adapted, and how is it different now than it would have been perhaps 9 months ago?
It's very different in a lot of ways for us, but in some aspects, things didn't really change too much. We've always offered a same-day service. We've always done telephone consultation triage prior to face-to-face appointments. The rest of the world now seems to have joined us in that, but we've been doing that for a number of years, as we found actually patients prefer it that way. It improves their level of access. But for us, obviously, we went into lockdown and had to decamp rather quickly. And I think, like many other industries, the one thing that we found was our biggest challenge on that was the IT infrastructure. And unfortunately in the NHS, because it's not a bottomless money pit, we tend to be a little behind on the technologies. We're not a huge company that can plough lots of money at it. So we have to adapt with what we've got. So the first few weeks of that were very challenging, as in, I had a duty to protect my staff, and we were given the same instructions as everybody else in the world. If you can work from home, please do. And certainly the theory was that if we can deliver care remotely by videos, telephones, etc., then, we should be off-site just like the rest of the world, and, not cross-contaminating with each other. So the problem we had was not enough laptops, not a strong enough infrastructure to support remote working. So we found that quite challenging. And one of the things we did to adapt was, what laptops we did, we had people off site. We did risk assessments on who our most vulnerable people were, because people forget that, lay people are vulnerable, but so are some of the healthcare workers. We have a number of BAME workers. We have mixed ages, mixed ethnicities, and therefore everybody has to be risk assessed individually. So we had to make sure that first priority was to get those that we could get off site working remotely up and running as fast as we could, and then take good care of the people who we couldn't do that immediately for. And the way we kind of did that was adhere to social distancing like everybody else. And unfortunately, it takes a bit of a nosedive on team morale, because where people have worked collectively in a big reception area, we have a lot of staff, and currently everybody is still, just as we were in the early days, working in individual areas. If you're in a room on your own, you're safe. If you come out of it, you've got to put your mask on, or the muzzle, as it's been affectionately termed. And, you know, we are sanitizing to the nth degree, and we live in a very sterile environment as a result. You know, even then it seeps in, but it has been a challenge in adapting the way we work. And I think, like we've always done, you know, I'm extremely lucky in that I'm supported by a great team, you know, both clinically and non-clinically. And everybody's pulled together, and there really has been, particularly in the early days, that almost like wartime spirit of we're in it together, and we've got this, we can do this. But as time goes on and this becomes our new normal, it's hard when you're working in an isolated environment, and it's hard when you're seeing friends, family, patients succumb to the illness. You know, some fare better than others, and we have been touched by it in the practice. So it just goes to show that no matter how safe you try to keep yourselves, the rest of the world has to join in with that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can totally get that. I've actually had a question already, funnily enough, from somebody called Dominic, and Dominic's saying, do you think that he's saying general practice, which makes me think perhaps he's involved in the NHS in some way, albeit he doesn't say. But he says, do you think that general practice will ever go back to how it was?
I think we have to look at some of the positives that we've taken away from this. I think every practice operates as an independent operator, so every practice will have its own differing views on that. I mean, our views has always been that, you know, give as much patient access as we can, but we still have to be safe. There are some things and some people that we do need to see face to face. But certainly where we are, we have nearly 10,000 patients, and we deal with over 700 calls every week. That's always been the same. We can get through more by using technology to our advantage. I mean, for us, we've never used video before. We've never used e-consultation before. And, you know, these have paved the way for different ways of working. I mean, I know there are other private companies, like I think it's Babylon Healthcare, who've been doing this. And we've always seen ourselves as a traditional role. But I think, like any other business, we still have to evolve to keep our patients happy, healthy and satisfied, and, you know, work as smartly and efficiently as we possibly can and give the maximum service. But I do think every other practice is, you know, it's hard working this way, because strangely or not, we do actually miss seeing patients face to face. And, you know, where people do need to be physically seen, of course, we've got to find a safe way to do that.
Yeah, no, obviously I get that totally. Yeah, I've got another question for you. I thought I was going to be asking all the questions, but clearly not.
You didn't tell me there was going to be questions.
No, of course I didn't. I'm not going to tell you everything, am I? You know, I've put you on the spot. So that's how you learn, when you're outside your comfort zone. You know that. I've been telling you that for years, haven't I?
I've been on the spot for the last 20 odd years.
Oh yeah, true. Right. Can't read this name actually. Steve. Yeah, Steve. So Steve has asked, have the patients changed? When he says I'm assuming he means in terms of their expectations and or the way they treat the practice, I guess. It just says, have the patients changed?
I think over the years, patients have changed, and a level of expectation has become, in some situations, unrealistic and unmanageable given the current funding. However, the changes that we've noticed during COVID have been, you know, it's like waves. There've been ups and downs. At the very beginning, it went very quiet, and everybody was doing its best to stay away, I think, from healthcare. And I think we were all a little bit, dare I use the word, fascinated by COVID when it first came in. This was something new. This was something we'd never seen before. And we were all focused on that. And it took the focus off our own needs for a while, be they health needs or social, whatever. And so I think everybody was in a state of watching everything develop. And then bit by bit, the levels crept in. And initially, it was people who genuinely needed the support. And there were a lot of inquiries about, you know, particularly around the shielding groups, you know, do I qualify? How do I get this? So we became signposts a lot of the way, and advice. You know, we used our time to proactively contact our patients, certainly those who were in those shielding groups, and work with them to try and make sure that they'd got somebody who could, do their shopping, they've got somebody that they can talk to, and they're not completely alone and isolated. It's quite a scary world when you become a shielding person and you don't have family or friends network around you. So we needed to focus on that first. But as time has enveloped and this has become more the new norm, we've definitely seen a rise in mental health challenges. I mean, where I work, we have a mixed demographic, and we have a lot of people who struggle, particularly with mental health. It's a deprived area, and the knock-on effects of that challenge mental health. So we've always had a lot of that, but we have noticed it become more. And to be perfectly honest, amongst ourselves, people forget we're human as well, and these constant changes, and we face the same fears as the general public, both clinical staff and non-clinical. And when it touches you personally, you become far more protective of yourself and those close to you. And we've all had our own fears, our own mental health ups and downs, and it's been quite challenging at times. So yes, I do think patient behaviour has changed, but I think people's behaviour has changed as a whole.
Yeah, on many different levels, it's fair to say, I think. Now, I know that you've been in a similar position to me in a sense, but for different reasons. So, as you know, I've been involved in digital media for many years now. I've been talking about, I was interviewing people on Zoom 6-7 years ago. And I've said this on this show a few times. People thought Zoom was an ice lolly for a long time. And I was trying to persuade people to do it more, to use it more, to do more video as part of their marketing strategy, podcasting, and everything else. Now, I think you were in a similar position, weren't you? In that, as you said, the NHS can be slow to change. People in the public sector, frankly, very often can be slow to change, and I just believe that to be true in my experience. Did you find that the situation forced your colleagues, people around you, and the NHS in the areas that you're involved in to change more rapidly? I'm thinking about the more use of digital. I'm thinking about more use of, I know you call it triage, I think telephone triage. So, using the phone more and even more so using video as part of the consultation process. Was this situation, did it force people kicking and screaming more into a technological solution as opposed to, we'll get around to it, we'll do it next year, and then they never do?
I think we were thrown into it. It was a cataclysmic change, and I do think it's one of the things that we will embrace moving forward. As I say, we've always done the telephone element of it, but we'd never before done video. We'd never worked remotely before, and we didn't think that for a lot of our staff, remote working would be possible. Well, this has just completely blown our world upside down and proved that you really can do this. And I think it's like any industry. Some staff were reluctant, both clinical and non-clinical. This is new. And I think what we have to remember is doctors qualify to practice medicine. They're not IT experts. And the amount of IT behind now the way we work is phenomenal. It's a portal for one thing, a portal for another. And it's become quite complex. And the younger GPs, well, they've kind of grown up with computers in school. But those that, my age group, we didn't have computers at school, or if we did, it was one of the big old huge things that used to sit in the library that you took a turn on. Nowadays that it's become part and parcel, and smartphones are normal. We worried about some of our older age groups coping with things like video consultations, and that it's been so easy. Some of the companies that support us have developed at a rate of knots that has never before been possible. Unfortunately, it does mean, that some of the parameters that have been in place, the GDPR elements that I think have held everybody back, have had to be relaxed because, priority is given to safety and getting the job done rather than, somebody might seize this and this isn't quite right. And we haven't done the due diligence around it. Due diligence kind of went out the window temporarily whilst we got the job done and we got set up. And that enabled us to move quite quickly. And I think, 6 months ago, I was literally out of the office for 3 hours to go to an hour's meeting, an hour travel, an hour back. and that was hard. Now I have an hour on Zoom. Problem is I'm swamped with Zooms and Teams and WebEx and everything else. But 6 months ago, you would never have got me talking to you like this, as you well know. It's amazing how that universe has changed. You know, you start off initially and you're very conscious about how you look and how you sound, and it's quite nerve-wracking. And then eventually you kind of get into that mode, well, hey, they've seen me in the flesh. I look no different on here, at least I hope I don't, than I do in the flesh. And you know what? It doesn't matter what I sound like. It doesn't matter what I look like. And actually, everybody's too busy scrutinizing themselves to look at you anyway. So it becomes irrelevant. But it has made us work smarter. That said, the downside to that is because we've not had that interaction, it can be quite lonely. And I know a lot of those that have been working remotely or in individual rooms have really struggled with it at times. We've kind of lost that human touch. Just sometimes when you see a colleague is feeling down or a family member, you'd go and you'd just put a touch on their shoulder and it makes a difference. And we've lost that. And I think, you know, I've certainly missed being with my practice manager colleagues. I see them 2-3 times a week on Zooms or Teams or whatever meeting we're at then, but it's not the same as being able to look somebody in the eye, to touch somebody. And that, I think, is what, you know, makes us human and allows us to function and lifts our morale. But I mean, don't get me wrong, we've done some great team building. There's been quizzes, we've had TikToks up the corridor, we've had a retirement, and normally we celebrate, you know, with a retirement that, you know, we put in a bit of a spread and we mingle and we socialize and we wish them well. Saying goodbye in a socially distanced environment was hard, but we did it. We pulled it off. So life still goes on, but we just have to adapt.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, people, I've mentioned this on another show, but people seem to be talking about whether they're having a good COVID or a bad COVID or an average COVID. What would you say, if you had to put you on the spot, what would you say you've had in terms of the overall COVID experience for you personally?
Put me on the spot, Mr. Crowshaw, never. I think mine's been a little bit bizarre because I've still had my normal. I haven't been confined to the house. Unfortunately, I couldn't get furloughed. We can't do that in the NHS. So while everybody was sat in their gardens in the sunshine, for 1 year we have sunshine and I don't get furloughed. But they were all enjoying that. My world carried on as normal. So I'd go to work, I'd come home. I've never been one for going out, clubbing it, pubbing it. So I wasn't impacted by any of that. But I think as time, initially I was so busy focusing on work and keeping everything safe. And I kind of saw it as my job to lead by example, to keep everybody safe and, you know, walk the talk. And I think over a period of time, what hit me hardest was not seeing family. I was still seeing all my work people. So my days were the same. My evenings coming home to you were the same. But I think it's the things that you take for granted that, you know, my daughter lives around the corner, my grandchildren around the corner. And like everybody else, that's, I think, is where it hurts most, having to keep yourself separate from your family and your loved ones. And that does take its toll.
Yeah, well, it's true. And, you know only too well that my kids live with their mum down in the south. And I went the best part of 6 months without seeing them once. You know, usually I see them every few weeks, as you know. And it does. But at the same time, as you know, my perspective on it is, and this is the way I see life in general, is it is what it is. So you just have to deal with it. You know, you just have to deal with it and believe that we'll come out the other end. And maybe just in a year or two, we will be looking back and say, oh, my God, do you remember 2020? What was that like? You couldn't have made that up, could you?
We're a living part of history, you know, and they're going to look back on this and think, you know, that was the year that exams didn't take place. That was the year that if you went out in public, you had to wear a mask. And you know, if things return to normal, then they'll look back and think, no, really, that's an exaggeration. But, we are the part of living history that says, well, yeah, it did. And it wasn't nice, but, we survived it.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, obviously, one of the things I've said, and I've said this to you, is that it seems that nowadays, especially, it seems that there's relatively few people, if any people, that you meet who knows anybody that's suffered from it. They might know somebody who's had it, but very few people now. And I said to you the other day about the fact that there seems to be a lot less celebrities at the moment that are appearing in the media, fine. Oh, I've had COVID and it was horrendous. Now there are still one or two, but even the one or two that you hear about are probably from a few months ago, and they're having what you might call a long COVID. What's been your experience in terms of being at the coalface? Are a lot of people getting it and having it in your experience, or are young people getting it, but they're asymptomatic? And what's the general feel, at least at a general practice level?
But I can certainly say we've been touched by it. No matter how hard we tried to keep our staff safe, we had staff that suffered with COVID, and it didn't seem to be particular to anybody of an age or any chronic conditions. Some of my younger ones, a couple of my older ladies, and we were very, very thankful that whilst they were poorly, they were hit with, I suppose, flu-like symptoms, and those have lingered, and they were poorly. It was clear that it had knocked it out of them. But thankfully they weren't hospitalised. They certainly weren't poorly to that extent. But we have also had, staff members and fellow colleagues who have tested positive, but been completely asymptomatic or symptom-free. And that is completely baffling. So it makes you wonder that, we weren't testing to the degree we're testing now initially. So there could be a much bigger population scale that have had it, that didn't get tested, and not everybody's having the antibody test now, and then we're also not aware how long the antibodies stay in the system. That's still quite an unknown territory. We're still seeing rising numbers in different areas, but I think the reason that we handle it better, if I'm honest, and this is obviously the non-clinical perspective, I think initially we geared up for what we saw Italy had. We got prepared. And we did, with these pop-up hospitals popped up so fast. And, the ventilators, we were getting engineers making as many ventilators as we could. And whilst we were in a state of panic of what was coming, we got control of it rather quickly. And I think as any illness, as it wears on and you become more knowledgeable about it, you adapt to the way you treat it. We learned that some antivirals, given at the right time, prevented the need for a ventilator, or SATS probes in the general public. That's what monitors your oxygen levels. And that is a clear giveaway of somebody that, is going to struggle. If your SATs drop below a certain level, then that's the time to go to hospital, and they will intervene, and that it's made a huge difference. So the way that we manage it means that less people, thankfully, are going on ventilators, and certainly less deaths. And it's very difficult to measure, who would have died anyway. But we've had patients that have gone in hospital with COVID, and, we've battened down the hatches thinking we might not see this person again. And all the odds, given age and symptomatic history, are stacked against them, but they've come out through it. And then you look at some of the celebrities, Kate Garraway's husband, who are really, really struggling with it. And, hopefully they all survive and come through, but it's been difficult.
So what's the word on the ground around the whole vaccine thing? I mean, I know obviously that the media report it in different ways, but the general perspective seems to be that there will be a vaccine eventually. But one minute you're hearing the media hyping it up, saying we'll have something a week on Friday, and then Chris Whitty or whatever comes out and says you got absolutely no chance for at least a year. Is there any kind of perspective or insight at a I suppose an NHS level as to at what point might there be some form of treatment, I suppose you might call it?
I think the general public tend to assume that we inside the NHS get the heads up and the knowledge before things happen, and we've got the inside info. And the reality is, we hear it as you hear it, and sometimes that doesn't do anybody any favours. A lot of things get thrown at us at the same time as the general public hear it on the news. Sometimes we get it thrown at us the day after. And in this case, I think it's very much like that. The focus at the moment is getting the flu campaigns up and running. This year is different than it's ever been before, because we've still got to social distance. We've still got to monitor the PPE. We've got to do it very carefully and very differently than we've ever done it before. And we're expecting much, much bigger numbers. Previous years, people don't particularly want to have it. Some people are convinced that, I had the flu injection and then I got flu. So we do have a cohort of patients that don't particularly want it, even though we've always said, you're in the at-risk group and you should have it. This year, we're seeing a bigger uptake, or certainly the expectation is we're seeing the bigger uptake. Plus, we've now got more patients to vaccinate. Unfortunately for us, we have to order our vaccines a year in front. So we order on the basis of what we had last year, and we don't get a huge sale or return on it. So, if we didn't have a good year last year, we kind of underestimate what we'll need this year. And then lo and behold, a pandemic springs on us and we're expecting bigger numbers. And the government has now said, well, don't forget the household members of the shielding people. These haven't been in our group before. Let's lower the age threshold to 50 to 64-year-olds if there's nothing wrong with them. We've never had that before. And we've got this limited supply of vaccine. This is also going to be the way we do things is going to change. There's a lot of drive-through clinics. Certainly in our area, practices are trying to work together to pool our resources, both staff and vaccine, to get the job done as best we can and to try and manage it at a distance. So we're looking at, hub units across Salford. We're looking at a mobile bus going around and stabbing people. We're having to think outside our clinical areas. We can't get the footfall in there. It's not safe to do it. So we're having to look at bigger areas. And that goes with its own planning for CQC regulations, indemnity and liability planning. So we're all trying to do this at the last minute. So I'm kind of hopeful that a COVID vaccine doesn't arrive on my doorstep tomorrow, because right now we're not quite ready to deliver it safely. And I think the priority has to be given to the flu vaccines at the moment, because this will become the test case for how we manage a COVID vaccine coming out. And I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, because all the drugs that we've had, certainly in the UK, go through such stringent testing beforehand. And the danger is that we rush to find a cure and rush too soon. So we have to make sure that it goes through those processes. And just like the IT evolution in the NHS has happened very, very fast, there's still parameters that have to be gone through to make sure that even though they're pushing it through fast and it takes priority now above everything else, and so it should, we still have to make sure it's safe. And I'm a bit like Chris Whitty on that one. I want to know it's safe before it's given to people I care about, my patients, my staff, myself. I want to know, and I need to know that it's safe to do that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really fair. Okay, obviously coming to the end now. Really delighted you could join me, and it's true what you said about, and it's fascinating actually to watch, because you've always been very nervous about the idea of being on camera and the idea of doing podcasts and everything. And I think I can share this with everybody. I mentioned this to you about just over an hour ago. Do you fancy being on the show? And you kind of went, yeah, go on then, all right. And then we're on. And that does show how your confidence is built on screen and doing these things as a result of having to do it day in and day out. So I think it's a great example of feel the fear and do it anyway, and practice, and you'll get better at it. So thanks ever so much for that, because I think it's important maybe to get a public sector perspective, because a lot of what I talk about is very commercially orientated. So I suppose it's Saturday, it's late. I suppose the last question is from me is, at what point did you realize what an amazing husband you had?
And I thought your last question was going to be, at what point are you making me a coffee?
Well, as soon as you mention it, yeah. But it's not really the right place to have a domestic on who's making the coffees, really, is it? Live on a Saturday night.
Well, watch this space.
Janine, thanks ever so much for joining me today. I think hopefully we've had some really good insights there, actually, and obviously have a little bit of a laugh on a Saturday night. Okay, so here we are, 29th. I also keep checking it, 29th of August, 31st of August, Monday is the last live stream. So tomorrow is the penultimate live stream. I'm not sure what I'm going to cover on Monday, which is the bank holiday Monday as it happens. But on Monday, the show will be almost in effect a celebration of all the different people and all the different contributions that we've had over the last month on the 31 days of live streaming. And I'm really looking forward to putting that together because it really has been a blast. All the different people that have been involved in the shows, and to just show some sound bites and some inputs from those different people. I'm really looking forward to doing that. So that's what 31st will be about, is just in effect is just celebrating some of the wonderful contributions I've had. So that's about it. It's time now for us to go and get our coffees. And hopefully you've got something out of this, and we will see you tomorrow. And Janine, thanks very, very much indeed for joining me today and feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Now, you know that's my mantra.
I do. Okay. Right. You've got to do the wave.
Do I have to?
Yes. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Okay. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Bye for now.